question for Coach Thacker.
Rob?
I guess I got one position maybe more than the other that everyone's wondering about is the linebacker position with, the guys you brought in from the portal, and, how is that looking, and, what kind of progress are they making?
Yeah. I'll start top down, and I'll give the history of spring ball as well to provide context. Kevin Sherr is doing a phenomenal job with that position group and really taking ownership there. The one that gave himself an advantage through his spring practice was Ternelius Tatum. Number one, it was availability, which is a pretty big thing to play the linebacker position. So he was available for all 15 practices, and I thought he was a better version of himself from spring practice 1 to 15, and he was a better version of himself last year. If you guys remember, Charlie Thomas had 2 targeting non-starts this past season. So Ternelius does have 2 starts underneath his belt to have some real experience. But we really, last year, relied on Charlie and on Ace Ely this past season. So Ternelius got his feet wet, but hasn't made it through a season as the guy. Right now, we're going to try to give him that opportunity early on. And then outside of that, we have competition and depth. So worst case scenario, we feel like we have competition and depth. Those guys, Andre White, Braylon Oliver, and then we brought in Paul Mawala after spring practice. The sample size of what they can and can't do is small here at Georgia Tech. All of those guys have played real downs at their respective previous universities from the transfer portal, and we have seen what it looks like when they make plays. Obviously, we valued that and brought them here, but they had limited action in spring, and then we're here on day 3. Coach gave us a big surprise today for the defense. So on day 3, we had a chance to put on our upper shoulder pads after 2 days in the underwear. So just getting off the field as the context. We'll have a chance to go watch some tape, and hopefully the physical nature of a linebacking position to go along with the acumen we'll play. There are other guys in that position group. Kyle Eford, Ashton Heflin is a freshman of note, and then Tyson Miga has been around from time to be able to compete at that position.
Kelly?
You guys really haven't had the bodies kind of sticking with that at the linebacker to go with a lot of 3 linebacker sets when you need to get bigger. Is that something now you can start to toy with a little more, and you have more depth on the defensive line as well to get maybe more multiple or unique in your formations?
It is, and even today, we had an opportunity to do that this past season. If we would have faced a heavier personnel grouping, that was another chance for Ternelius to go in and get some real reps. So this past season, there were plenty of times where Ace Ely, Charlie Thomas, and Ternelius Tatum were on the field. So that would be another opportunity. Someone like Paul Mawala, he actually played the Sam linebacker position at some of his previous stops. So he fits into that mold, as well as Braylon Oliver. That was really his role this past season at Minnesota when he was the Sam linebacker overhang. He played some will, or some money linebackers we call it, and some third down packages. So those guys have versatility, I think, to your point, to allow us to be creative. It's only day 3 install, so we haven't had a chance to think about any situational football, third down packages, fourth down packages, 2-minute packages, where we would use those guys, their speed, athleticism, and physicality yet, but that's certainly on the brink. Thanks, appreciate it.
Patrick?
Thank you.
Coach Thacker, can you give us a rundown, summary fashion, as you just did for linebackers, for the defensive line, please?
Yeah. It's hard to talk about one player. The narrative is more about the collective. We feel like we're really starting to get some size and depth at that position. Marco Coleman's doing a great job of creating a mentality with that group. Brian Baker's a great mentor and help for us to be in that room and to give Marco some advice. So I'm really happy with their progress. But to your point, it'll take me some time to talk through those things. Interior-wise, again, we feel like we have some size. We have some guys that look like Zeke Biggers and like Horace Lockett, and look like some pretty Power 5 defensive tackles that will allow us to be a little sturdier in there. We've got a lot of experience. We've got Micaiah Scott and Daquan Dowse, who were essentially the 2 starting defensive tackles this past season, and have quite amount of experience and have played some good football for us. And then we've even got a young man like Jason Moore that's been in real matches and played in North Carolina and got a sack for the inside. Working outside, we have 3 defensive ends at the boundary end or rush, as we call it, that have all played. I believe they've all started games, if my memory serves, but Kyle Kennard probably the most experienced of the group, Noah Collins and Kevin Harris to give us some depth there. And then I'll give you a little bit of a new flavor at the end position. Sylvain Union played a bunch of downs for us this past season. Usually he would be behind Keon White and be a relief pitcher for him, but certainly played some great football for us at times. But two new names at Tenosa. E.T. came from the game this past spring. He's starting to really improve. Josh Robbins has been around for a while. And then Paul Mawala and Eddie Kelly are two guys that we got at the break. I say at the break, post-spring practice as far as roster management from the portal. And really excited about Eddie Kelly. He was a true freshman this past season at South Florida. Again, first day of pads, but the talent is there. The talent and the mentality and the coachability are there. So I'm really excited about his fit. Those guys are cross-trained. Although we kind of fit him into a position for a depth chart at end or rush, we'll really see as we move forward the things that people like to talk about is how much pass rush ability each of those guys have as we're just going through day one, day two, day through install early on.
Coach, some of the success you had last year, relatively speaking, do you hope that carries over to this year, or is it just a completely new outlook?
So we're I appreciate the question. We're able to pull illustrations from last year, and I'll give you examples so I'm not just saying something cheesy. Like the way that we created the identity going into this fall practice is we allowed the guys to have summer team building exercise, if you will. Anthony Parker led that. AP is one of the player personnel guys, has great relationships, and really tries to develop the team and the culture, if you will. So what I'm trying to get at is the guys on offense, defense, and even the special teams, they tried to create 4 core values, and then they tried to have a mantra, and it had nothing to do with what the coaches said, right? Of course, we want some of the things that we say to permeate these values that they have, but at the end of the day, we're out of the room. This is something they did in the summer on their own, and the idea is, of course, they create an identity, and they take ownership in that. So every single day, they've got their notebook, and they've got their little cover, fall book, playbook, and then on the back, we have to remind them of those 4 core values of that mantra, and then alongside that, we've created some things that, coaching-wise, that we want our identity to be. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. This is where we meet as far as the defensive room right here. So I look back at this screen when I'm talking to the guys, and a big part of the context is, hey, this is this play, that play, this scheme, this call, this signal, those type things. But we do invest a lot of time in trying to create an identity. My message to those guys last year was, at moments we had an identity. And the illustration that I used on this video screen right here was actually the Virginia Tech game. In that game, we were on the road, and there was a lot of context to that game. That was Zach Pyron, a true freshman's first start. He played incredibly well. He had the game-winning touchdown where he takes off his helmet, and kind of the iconic thing for him in his freshman year. But in that game, there was a pick 6 that Virginia Tech scored on. We had a punt return that was also returned on us. So a lot of bad things had happened, adversity in that moment. We get to the fourth quarter, and we're actually down. I believe the score was we were down 11 in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes left. All right. We had a moment where they run the ball inside the 10. It's first and goal in the 9, down 11. Analytically, if they would have scored again, the game probably would have been over. It would have been difficult for us to come back. In that moment, we had a player go down, so we walked over to the sideline. We had a chance to huddle up. And in that moment, it was a moment that I felt like, I romanticize these stories sometimes, but it was a moment where I felt like we had an identity. The things that came out of our mouth were the things that we valued. It does not matter what just happened. It does not matter the context of the game. It doesn't matter the adversity we've been through. Just go play the next play. Do your job. Focus on the things that you can control in those moments. And it wasn't some Newt Rockne coach speech. It was the things that the guys were saying is just go out there, just go do your job. Get your eyes to the sideline, get the signal, communicate, do your job, and let's go rely on our training that we've had for a long time. After that long injury timeout, we go back out there, and Daquan Dowse is the zero nose. He has to hold the center, which is doing his job. He does his job, and the ball enters in the opposite B gap. He snatches off, and from day one of fall camp to spring practice, the running back entered with the ball in the near hand, so his trained behavior is to punch that ball out. So he punched the ball out. Micaiah Scott falls on it. So in that one moment, we responded, all right, and I felt like we had an identity. The story goes on to be a great story. From that moment on, there were 4 more possessions. We had 3 takeaways, and we had a chance. The offense used the momentum to go down and do a great job and score, and we won the game on a 2-minute stop, another 2-minute stop, and Charlie Thomas knocked the ball out to the quarterback to kind of have the walk-off takeaway. So it was like, hey guys, we'll put up 18,000 words and adjectives and have all this coach speak, but that's an illustration of what it looks like to have an identity, all right? So I just spent 85 freaking minutes answering your question, all right? But that is an illustration of last year. You said we had some relative success. It was very relative, all right? We're trying to be a better version of ourselves every single day. But that was an idea of like, hey guys, that's what it looks like, you know? And a lot of people in this room were part of that moment, so you can build off of that moment. That being said, we've got a whole, all right, new year with a bunch of new faces. We just talked about guys that came from the portal and the roster attrition and the roster addition and the roster management. So now it's our job to recreate our own identity. You guys take ownership in what you say that you value. All right, but here are some things that have some backbone to it. This is what it looks like. Now let's go fight for that. So, right, we talk about all these culture things and identity things, but now we get to see what that really looks like, right? So toughness is like the most overused word in defensive football or football and being physical. But I told the guys, I think it was last night, it's like to actually be tough, you have to have adversity in your way to actually do some things. So without adversity, toughness does not exist. So those are the things that we're trying to test and improve right now.
I guess kind of how do you manage kind of the load at safety? You have Lamiles, who's kind of an all-conference guy. CP, Lee had a great second half of the season after Jay got hurt, and then Jay's back. So how do you kind of manage that, and does it change maybe how you look at those guys and mix and match a little bit back there?
Cross-train. They cross-train. So in specific, Lamiles cross-train strong safety to nickel. CP Lee cross-trains from strong safety to free safety. Jay King kind of stays anchored at the free safety spot. And when we get into sub-package, Jalen King would be the free safety or the dime in some sub-packages. So all those guys are cross-trained, and we would feel like in the framework of a game, those guys would have a rotation. Who would start? It's going to require some humility out of those guys. Whatever final decisions we make, they have great relationships. I don't see that being an obstacle for us. The ego thing. So I think one of the things as coaches, we're always anxious about what can or cannot go wrong. That's just kind of the nature of us. But that being said, those guys give me a lot of confidence. Probably the biggest thing they give me confidence in. You feel more confident when guys are communicating on defense. And defense these days, and specifically Buster and our offense does a great job. Pre-snap communication is at a premium. And I thought we were able to eliminate get out of bad plays defensively or eliminate explosives because those guys really have a great grasp of the game. As much as their physical talents, they're really cerebral back end, and they do a great job of pre- and post-snap communication, which gives the whole defense confidence. So they've got a really good grasp of what they're doing, and that's, I think, a lot of pride in that group and proud of their progress.
Time for a couple more. We'll go Rod, we'll go Chad.
Sticking with the secondary, Amari Harvey seems like one guy that's been taking advantage of the opportunity with that open spot there at the corner. What has he done to put himself in that position, and what do you see the competition like there?
Yeah, he just got recognized at the end of practice for being a better version of himself. Again, I always try to caveat these. I'm so sorry for being cheesy as a coach, but that's what we ask him to do, be a better version of yourself. And Amari, if Amari was standing right here, I'm not trying to embarrass him, Amari's had some immature moments. Amari is learning how to be a better version of himself, and now it's really showing up on the field. He was always a playmaker. I'm just trying to think if I can give you an objective answer, but I don't know if anyone has more football disruption in 3 days of practice. So we grade that by takeaways, by glove outs, punch outs, DBs, getting PBUs. I don't know if anyone has disrupted the football more than him in the first 3 days. We actually have a calculation. We haven't had a chance to watch practice. So I'm proud of him. I'm proud of his maturity. He's competing for a role in the secondary at corner. Some guys that have played some downs, Spider Sims has played the most downs at that position. And we feel like we've got a healthy version of Kenan Johnson. Kenan Johnson was really a highlight in spring ball. He's always been part of the rotation, but for whatever reason, availability, he's had a smaller role. So if he's a version of himself that he was in spring, then he's poised to have a really good season. And then Kenyatta Watson's has come on as well to work with that rotation as well. One other move that we made, Rodney Shelley was a true freshman this past season. In the Georgia game, he got a lot of burn when KJ Wallace went down at the nickel position. In spring, we taught him the nickel position even more. In fall camp, we're working him at corner, so he has versatility because he's got some talent.
Chad, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, yesterday I asked Buster Faulkner about being from Georgia and coaching for this program. Same to you, what's kind of mean to wear the Georgia Tech logo for you?
Yeah, shoot. I don't romanticize it, but it's special. I answer that question outside of the framework of my appreciation and respect for Georgia Tech. It's about my family, So Tuesday was the first day of school, and my daughter is now in 3rd grade. My son got on the bus. We were just talking, Mike and I, at 6:25 a.m. is what time they get on the bus. So he's in kindergarten, so he had his first day. But my daughter has now been in the same school system from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and my son's kindergarten teacher was her kindergarten teacher. And then this summer, we have the availability of our family. So Georgia is special to me. I have a great appreciation for it, being from here. My mom remarried my stepdad, who was a high school football coach here in the state of Georgia for a long time at Cass High School, North Forsyth in Gainesville when I was with him. He was a state championship high school football coach. So I've grown up in the state and in the framework of football, and absolutely love it here. As I grew up in Georgia, there's an appreciation and respect for my family in this place. And then the more I've been here, the more I've really grown to love the people. But have a tremendous amount of respect for Georgia Tech. And it's exciting right now. I think Brent's done a great job of, he talks about it a lot, but he wants to bring the amount of respect that he has for this place back to perception and then turn that to reality. And he's getting a lot of things done to turn that. Ultimately, it'll be about our performance, and we understand the responsibility that we have ahead. But I really appreciate and respect this place and what he's doing to create momentum for this, and we've got to capitalize on it with our performance.
Outstanding. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
See y'all.